Hi guys, and welcome back to Manch Talk. I am Carla Garrick and I am your host for today. Thank you for joining me again. My apologies for missing last week. I actually ended up having a dental emergency with some emergency oral surgery, which is always fun on your literal birthday. So last week was a bit of a bust. In fact, it was a really tough week, and I want to acknowledge that because I think we're so inclined to gloss over when hard things happen to us, and I'm not sure that's really the best approach to life. So I don't know what your week looked like last week, but here was mine. On Monday, my mother had a stroke and was hospitalized. On Tuesday, I found out that one of my dear friends of 15 years died in a snowstorm because he froze to death. On Wednesday, on my birthday, or Tuesday was my birthday, on Wednesday, I had oral surgery. So just those things were enough to put me in kind of an intense tailspin. But why do I bring up the dental work? So I think I did actually mention it a couple of weeks ago that I bit down really hard on a pork chop that ended up having a bone in it. And the bone ended up splitting my tooth back here. And the reason I bring it up is because I think we need to be grappling with informed consent as sort of a notion, and also kind of maybe create tools for ourselves as humans to navigate the medical landscape world a little better. Now, everyone came through COVID mania. We all had some kind of experience through the last 4 years. But in that experience, with the vaccine mandates, with the sort of experimental nature of the products that were being foisted on Americans, and with the fact that the manufacturers, so the pharmaceutical companies, big pharma, mostly in America, I'm talking Pfizer and Moderna, were given liability waivers, meaning that they do not stand behind their products at all. The insurer of last resort is the US government, but that system is entirely broken as well. So what happened to me at the dentist? So I went for a consultation the day before and then had this procedure scheduled where they were going to break out my tooth. And somewhere in that conversation, we were talking about an implant and blah, 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 right? And I did go home and I Googled based on what, I feel like I was told. And then I got to the place, the oral surgeon in Nashua, on the Wednesday, and I'm in the chair, and several things, right? So first of all, I said no to the laughing gas. I said no. I was like, oh no, I'll just take the injection, one up in the roof of your mouth. That one really, really hurts if you've had that experience. And then he didn't just do the procedure. So you're lying there with your mouth open, right? It's not our finest moment for any of us. And he warns me, he goes, you're going to feel some pressure and you're going to hear a crack, right? And that happens and my tooth is out. Okay. So I start crying, just like little tears running down my face, which is a physiological reaction to your body knowing, hey, something with nerves in just got cracked out, right? Like someone just broke a tooth out of your mouth. And then he said to me, hey, do you want to see the implant? And I'm like, sure. So he shows me the implant, which is like yay big. It's titanium, which are definitely words that were never, ever expressed to me before that moment. And when we had looked at the x-rays the day before, he actually mentioned, he was like, look how close it is to your sinus. So now I see this titanium rod and I am like, oh, hell no. No. You're not shoving that up my jawbone, close to my nose. Because one, it's metal, right? So I was like, oh, I didn't research that. I don't know what metal does when it's stuck in your jaw. But I do know this, as a real estate agent in New Hampshire, when I ask people why they're moving, you know, if they have like a cool spot and you can tell they love it, they'll often say, oh, I had a joint replacement, shoulder, knee, hip, and they put in metal and now I can't like live in the winters, right? Like the metal actually gets cold. And as we know, we have cold winters. So why am I bringing this personal story up? Because in that moment, I had to advocate for myself in a high stress medical situation where I had already paid thousands of dollars for the procedure. And I just said to him, I don't think I want that to happen. No, I'm going to say no. And they were incredibly professional, to their credit. They were like, if you don't want to do it now, that's fine. We can schedule it. I'll just stitch you up. And then, you know, we can figure out once you're comfortable and all of that. Now, I mean, I also let them know some more in that process that I'm a lawyer. So maybe they were just like, hey, we don't want to sue you, get sued. But it reminded me how difficult it actually is to listen to your own intuition or to listen to your gut, as grandma used to say, and to actually be in a situation and kind of go, no, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have this happen to me and my body. And I want to leave all of you with the notion or the inclination or the inspiration to understand that that is why we're here, right? We have one life, and if you want to live it optimally for yourself, then you have to be able to advocate for yourself with true agency. And maybe my decision was wrong. It's okay. I can go back another day once I feel fully informed. Why is informed consent important? I mean, not only is it actually the underlying principle of our medical system and of the Hippocratic oath, right? But it is really important if you're going to do like things to your corpus that you know what you're doing and that you feel comfortable with that decision. So I do think, as you know, MAHA rolls up and as we see HHS making already changes, and we see stuff happening here in New Hampshire, including there was a bill that did pass the House that has stopped the Vaccine Association. That doesn't mean vaccines are now illegal in New Hampshire. It doesn't mean anything that you're seeing anywhere on X that the Democrats are claiming. What it does do is it stops the Ponzi scheme of these people are paying these people, are paying these people, are paying these people, so that hopefully this person down the line will get an injection. But upstream, most of those people are actually just making money because of regulatory capture. So I was really happy to see that that bill did pass the House and will be going on to the Senate. Now, what else is happening up there at the State House? Well, so far, so good as far as I can tell. I haven't been as active up there as I have been in past years, mostly because I record this at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday when everything is happening. So maybe I need to find a new time. But the big one that I'm kind of interested in and that I want to delve in with you guys today is the cannabis bill, and maybe talk a little bit about the history of marijuana in New Hampshire, sort of the history of the bills that we've seen over the years, and kind of figure out if this one that they now came up with is the right approach, if there are better things we could be doing, or, you know, what the landscape looks like. So first of all, HB 75, that is the current cannabis bill, did pass, I believe, this week in the House. So it will now go to the Senate, where good bills, as you've heard me say 100 times, go to die. I'm cautiously optimistic because we have some different senators in the Senate that possibly this is the one where we can at least start to say that we too here up in New England have some kind of cannabis program. Now, currently in New Hampshire, medical marijuana is legal. You need to get a medical card in order to fall under the program. The one shop I know about is up at the Shirt Masters going out of Concord. But that program has never been, it was never well devised, including the way the forms were set up, and because of this tension between the federal government and states' rights. There were some gun rights things that got super squishy, including you would have to, if you were getting a medical marijuana card, a lot of people alleged then you wouldn't be legally allowed to have firearms. I've always disagreed with that interpretation, but that was sort of the issue or the reason people said don't get a medical marijuana card. Way back in the day, or actually before we go way back in the day, let me just say what HB 75 does. So HB 75, which did pass the House and is on to the Senate, decriminalizes possession. So what does that mean? So it doesn't create a bureaucracy. It doesn't create state-owned pot stores, and let's put a pin in that because maybe that is actually the way to go. What it simply does is it says if you are found in possession of marijuana, that is not a crime. It doesn't say that you can distribute it or sell it. So I would say the model is pretty much like the way people are operating currently, which is mostly people drive to Maine or to Massachusetts, where it is legal, where you pay 30% taxes, allegedly, on these products. And I have never seen any other car than a New Hampshire car at a state pot store that's on the border in Massachusetts or Maine. So there's definitely a market here and a market need. So currently it's technically illegal if you go to a pot store in Massachusetts and you drive back here, you are technically breaking the law. Of course, I don't think it's really enforceable. I think even the police have come to realize that all the scary stories they were told over the years is nonsense. Why do I know that's true? Because if you look at all the states where they said the sky was going to fall if these things happened, i.e. if marijuana was legalized, the sky has not indeed fallen. Or if it's falling, it's definitely not because of the cannabis laws. It's probably because of economic reasons and overextension because we have made the government too big, where, they tell you what plant you're allowed to have. That, on the face of it, is actually proof that the government is too big. So what does this landscape look like? So decrim, I think it's an interesting approach, but here's basically what we've tried to do over the years. So in 2013, medical cannabis was legalized. Before that, actually under Lynch, it's funny because I had the AI just quickly summarize everything for me on Grok. And if you are interested in what is happening with artificial intelligence, I would highly recommend playing around with these platforms a little bit. It is fascinating. I'm going to side quest here for 2 secs to say go to my website, carlagerrick.com, and check out. I've started an entire series where I just save the conversations I have with the AI. And I don't treat everything like gospel. I see a lot of mistakes based on things I know or the way things are framed. You can call it out sort of on propaganda language and then go down that rabbit hole. But it really is an incredible tool for people who are deep thinkers, who have a lot of knowledge, and who, like me, enjoy connecting the dots in a way to go, oh, what's the answer to this riddle? So here's an example of one I had, and I believe I posted it early this morning on my website. I had heard years and years ago when I moved to New Hampshire that New Hampshire had the highest concentration of police to population in the world. Now, it may have been in America, but when I asked the Grok this morning, I did say in the world, right? So basically, how many cops per capita do we have? The good news is, whoever told me that stat was entirely wrong. It is not. You guys want to know what the one is? Where is the largest concentration of security to private people? I.e., where is the biggest police state in the world? The Vatican. I thought that was pretty interesting, and in some ways makes perfect sense to me. In fact, like whenever I have a crazy idea, let's just take it for the screenplay, right? So this is just the story. But I think a really compelling heist movie would be if someone broke into the Vatican library and stole all the secret scripts that are still kept there, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to find out something interesting. All right, so I asked the AI to sort of summarize what HB 75 is, and sort of what the chances are of it passing. Now, interestingly, so of course, again, it has passed the House. It was a fairly narrow margin, but it now has to go to the Senate. Hopefully the senators are like, yeah, we could do this one. We're down with decriminalization. But then the Grok actually says that they think the highest barrier to entry is going to be Kelly Ayotte and the governor's office. So I do think that we need to really think about how to frame the argument of why this decriminalization is the right approach for New Hampshire. So, I mean, the obvious reasons, of course, are things like it is upholding personal liberty as a fundamental right. What do I mean by that? I mean, we're the live free or die state, right? So the fact that we haven't been able to pass a cannabis legalization bill in the 16 years I've been involved in this issue is jaw-dropping to me. And to just close that loop, back with Governor Lynch, New Hampshire's Republican House and Senate passed a legalization bill. I believe it was in 2011. It might have been 2010, but it was back around that time. And Governor Lynch, a Democrat, vetoed the bill because he did not want to give that kind of win to the Republicans, right? Because at that stage, it was like a Democrat issue versus a Republican issue. Now I believe it's an individual versus a government issue, right? And also a states' rights issue to some extent. But that decision by Lynch to veto that bill harmed New Hampshire and harmed us in terms of this industry, which the horse is out of the barn, guys. Like, we can only decide how we want to navigate this landscape. Now, I think this is going to surprise a lot of people, but I think that we should do the pot stores in the state liquor stores. Why do I think that? I've come around to this way of thinking. And I think philosophically, I'm still grappling with like how this entirely makes sense. But I think we've created a paradox where on the one hand, we're treating the government as the arbiter of morality, and then on the other hand, we're treating it not as the arbiter of morality. And somewhere in that paradox, government grows and parties just keep fighting with each other. So how can we stop that from happening? What if, and I broke the Grok this morning with this question, and it didn't answer it by the time I had to pack up to come here. But what if the government only regulated vices, right? Because we have this tension where people go, oh, I don't like that. And then you end up with like red dye in your food that you're giving your kids. And then you look at the internet when someone says, hey, RFK in this scenario, we're going to ban the red dye. And then you see all these libertarians pop up over here and they're like, no, keep red dye legal. Just tell people it's bad for them and then they'll decide not to take it. And I'm like, why are we creating this weird cycle? I don't know, where we're like, let's legalize all the poisons. I'm not sure it's the right solution. And we can look at the alcohol market, right? Alcohol used to be prohibited. I don't think anything should be prohibited, but I don't think the flip side of that we argue where we say nothing should be prohibited and we should just tell the truth, those two dynamics are not the real thing that is happening in life, because the telling of the truth part is being suppressed by billions of dollars of propaganda from the government and from industry propaganda, where they basically lie to you about their products. What do I mean? I mean all the pharmaceutical ads on television, guys, because if you can't see the loop from Domino's Pizza to you need this pill for your aching joints, then I can't help you. All right, so why do we want this HB 75 to pass? We want it to pass because it decriminalizes possession, but it doesn't actually create a bureaucratic market in New Hampshire as they've done in all these other states. And, 30% taxes is astronomical. It's uneconomical. It's exploitative, frankly. And I don't want to see that kind of tax structure come to New Hampshire. So the reason I fell out on this idea that it should actually be in the liquor stores is because then we could do in the same way we do with alcohol, which is one of the New Hampshire advantages people tell me about, is, oh, we like our vices and we like it when that money comes to the government. And so, we buy in bulk here with the government and then they sell it at a lower tax than our surrounding states. So I'm like, why don't we do that with cannabis? And that is how we then fund government, because everyone got their property tax bills and everyone is a little butthurt because they went up, right? Like we have seen the inflation is now, the spend stuff is coming home to roost. Why are our property taxes going up? Because the schools are inefficient. They are not actually delivering the product they're promising that they're delivering, and enrollment's down and costs are up, and most of that is for red tape administrators, and we can do better. All right, so briefly, this is what happened with the cannabis bills over time. So in 2013, medical cannabis was legalized. In 2014, we had an early recreational push. That one was really close. It was 170 to 162 in the House. And that was to legalize marijuana as recreational cannabis, and it was modeled on the Colorado framework. This was where they said we'd allow possession up to 1 ounce for adults, but it stalled in the Senate because the Senate is where good bills go to die. Let's change that, guys. In 2017, there was decriminalization. Governor Sununu did sign House Bill 640, and that reduced the penalties for possession up to 3/4 of an ounce. Those of you who've been doing this work with me for a long time know that 3/4 ounce, in my circles at least, is called a Bradley because it was going to be 1 ounce. And then the Senate was like, no, we got to make it 1/2 ounce. And then Jeb Bradley was like, let's compromise and we'll make it a 3/4 ounce, which makes no sense to anyone if you're actually in this world, right? All right, 2019, we had a home cultivation veto. Why would home cultivation be the best option? That just basically says, if you want to grow your own plants in your own home, it is not the government's business. Now that seems like a reasonable position to anyone who understands human autonomy, because is it really the government's job to tell you what plants you're allowed to grow? I contend, no, it is not. In 2022, we had another recreational attempt that was blocked again, that also passed the House and died in the Senate, and that was for possession and cultivation of adults. All right, and then in 2023, so now we're within the last couple of years, Sununu did soften his stance on legalization, and in 2024 was the closest we got yet, even though it ended up failing as well. So that was House Bill 1633, and it proposed legalizing recreational cannabis with the state-run sales. And even though that one was backed by Sununu, it still could not get through. It was tabled by the House after disputes over the regulatory model came up. And, I think that's one of those situations where you even have pro-liberty people arguing about what the best approach is. I mean, some people hate that I like the state pot store model, but I like it for the taxes. Because here's a reality, guys. So taxing vices seems like the fairest. It's kind of a use tax, right? But also, if we keep cutting taxes in other places, which is laudable and wonderful, including the interest and dividends tax, right? Then there are things we are still funding that someone has to pay for. So we're going to have to find those revenue streams. So making pot competitive within the state as per surrounding states and kind of mimicking that alcohol model doesn't seem like the worst idea to me. All right, so 2025, possession is legalized, sales are left out. So on February 20th, the House passed House Bill 75 on a voice vote, which I think is kind of interesting. And maybe that was the little magic trick where they let it happen, right? Like sometimes up at the State House, they kind of have to pretend they're not doing the things they're doing. So they legalized possession and use for adults 21 and older without establishing a sales framework. So it says, with Kelly Ayotte, a vocal opponent in office, its fate in the Senate and beyond remains unclear as of today. So I want to say our jobs as liberty activists and people who want to see human freedom flourish, which includes making your own decisions about your own body and making your own decisions about what you put in your body. And I can assure you, if the government thinks they can mandate experimental products that have liability waivers for the people who are putting the junk in the market and then in your bodies, then for crying out loud, we can legalize marijuana. All right, that's all I got for today. Thank you for joining me. I will be back here again next week with another edition of Manch Talk. Probably going to change the name, going to get a new intro. I swear all of it's in the works. I also want to remind everyone, it is legislative session, so definitely go to GenCourt Mobile, find out what your issues are, and make sure you're signing in for bills, showing up, testifying, doing all of that good stuff. Please do follow me on social media. You can find me under my name, Carla Gericke. That's Gericke, in case you're not watching and just listening. And please follow my X Lives. I'm doing 365 X Lives as my New Year's resolution for this year. I have done 56 in a row. I haven't missed one yet. And hopefully there's some value to that for people who are trying to live their best lives as I am. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you again next week.